there, welcome to the Nanaimo Charters. My name is Ian and I'm aboard our Hunter 33 and I'm going to just be showing you a few of the ropes before you take off on charter. What we're looking at here is an entrance into the boat. This is your helm seat and this black button releases it. So you can pull that out and then you can actually pull the seat up. That's got to be disengaged and you'll watch as it comes down. It will go in with a healthy click. There we are, and that's as far as it'll go. To disengage, put your hand underneath there, give that black button a tug, hold onto the black line and just let it down. Over here we have the bilge pump. It's a manual bilge pump, and the handle for that is inside the cockpit locker. We'll show that to you when we get there. Now, starting the engine, this is a single lever Morse control up here. I'll let you have a look at that. To disengage the gear aspect of it, push that rubber button and you'll see it actually goes in. If you can't push it in, it means that you haven't got it back. You see, there's no feeling that it's going to so I'll pull it back. You'll hear an audible click, and that now is engaged for gears. We don't want gears to start with, obviously, so we just want a bit of throttle. So I'm going to push that button in, which disconnects the gear section of it. I'm going to give ourselves a bit of throttle. Then coming across to here, we just put the yen marquee in and give this a jolly good twist, and it fires up straight away. Now the first thing that we're going to look for, once we've started it, is we've got water coming out of the exhaust. Why don't we step ashore and then we can show you exactly where that comes. Most probably hear it more than you can see it. It's tucked underneath the curve of the transom, and you can see the water jetting out. That's a good healthy stream of water, but it's really important that we have that coming out once you start. Right, before we leave the dock, most importantly, undo the shore power, which is just a twist and pull out. Okay, so to put it in gear once it's warmed up, you bring it back into that neutral position, and then the button will automatically pop out, and then you go ahead and engage gear. Then you can feel us move away from the dock. Move back, and you go stern. And that's always important to check that you have both the head and the stern before departing the dock. And that is in neutral where you can push that button in. So remember that, you're only in neutral when you can push that button in. If you push it in and hold it, to reiterate, it gives you throttle only without gears. That is your neutral position, which can be tested. Down there, that's your emergency steering cover plate. You undo that and you drop the helm, the actual tiller, onto the top, and you can steer without having to use the wheel. And up here on the instrument part, we've got a Ray Marine plotter, and we've got an Autopilot here, which is very, very straightforward to operate, and you'll see the instructions to that in your manual. And over here you should have your depth. Right, to stop the engine, you want to put it into neutral. Let it idle if you've been running hard for at least 10 minutes to cool off, and then go back to the button just above the key and press that firmly. There you go, and then you can switch the key off. If you switch the key off before pushing the button, a couple of things can result. You can damage the alternator, and you shut the power supply off to the solenoid, so you won't be able to shut the engine off. So please make sure that you push the button to stop while it's been idling for a while. Your hose, which is important, please remember to top up the tanks before you leave. Everybody says they filled them, but just to make doubly sure, you've got diesel fill over there, but further up you've got water, and you make sure that your tanks are topped up with fresh water. On this side, here, we'll have the propane. So if you want to light the stove, this is what you do first. Up here, and there are the propane bottles. Now if you have a look at your barbecue, it's plumbed in permanently through that stanchion base that comes in here, and there it is down there. So you open up the one bottle, and it will give you propane to your barbecue. So for those of you not familiar with in-mast furling mains, you have a Selden system here, which is one of the best in the market. The most important thing to remember when you're pulling these sails out is make sure you're going upwind, make sure that there is no tension on the boom vane, and have some slack in the main sheet. What that allows is for the sail to come out along the boom without the pressure being pulled down by either of the lines we just talked about. So essentially, heading upwind, you pull the out haul and the sail will come straight out. You can see it goes around that spigot underneath the boom and comes all the way back here. I'm going to just give you a little demonstration of how that works. So when we pull the main out, just to go through the things we've got to do, make sure the in haul and the out haul, which go around the ratchet up on the mast, are free and ready to go. And this one here is your out haul, and that's your boom vang loose, and that is your main sheet loose. So with that, you should be able to put a few turns on here, and as I pull, you'll see that the sail will start coming out. There we are. You see it coming out now? That's it. But it's most important that the setting on that gear under the boom is set on freewheel and not on ratchet, or else it won't move. Here we go. And out it comes. Right, so you can see the whole sail now. Now we suddenly put it away. Just again, head upwind, free everything off, leave it free there, and come to this side, which is your furling side. You see as I pull this, the other one is going back, and you watch that, the sail is very neatly being rolled away. And without any effort, I don't even need to put it on a winch. You can see it's just getting rolled away perfectly well. And we pull it until the blue UV patch on the clew touches the track on the main. And you'll see it's almost there now. And we're home. So I'll lock those two off, and I'll just sneak up on the boom vang. Here we are. That's it. Lock that off, and there's your out haul. So everything's gone back to sleep. That's just fine, and the main sheet is tight, so it won't be clanging above our head. So that's the operation of the main in a nutshell. This can be rolled in using a winch handle, but you make sure that you have this lever, which you pull up, you can slide from side to side, is in fact set in the free wheel position. That allows you to just roll up the sail using these two lines. Whenever you use the windlass to pick up the anchor or deploy the anchor, always make sure that the engine is running. You want the engine to be running at about 1500 RPM for some time to get charge into the batteries. And always remember to tether it, so in windy conditions it doesn't slam down on your toes. Alright, you have a snubber, that's a hook that takes all the weight off this windlass. And over here you have an up and a down button. So that's up and that's down. It will only work when the engine's running. So you run the engine and switch the breaker on, and that's it. If this ever jams, which it sometimes does as it transitions from rope to chain, you have to undo this with a winch handle. Then you can pull back and this gypsy here will be free. And you can just pull it and reset it, and always help the rope and chain transition just by feeding it and keeping your fingers well clear. Okay, now down here are our battery switches, or the battery switch, which will switch. Now let's shine a light on it. There we are. That position 1 is the house bank, and you can see by the little toggle it's in position 1. If you rotate it so the gear sign's upside down and you rotate it to the both, it combines the start battery and the house battery together, which is great if you've got the battery charger on and you're charging up, or whether you're motoring along, you can have them on both and they'll charge up equally. I generally, when I'm at anchor, like to switch to 1 and leave the emergency start or start battery untouched. This is the windlass. You see it's written windlass at the top. I don't know if any of you are familiar with these, but they're very effective If you push that down, you'll see this little tag will come down. To reset it, you just load it up like that, and with a cheerful cluck, that's back in business. So that's the only battery switching that you have to do, is to decide whether to go from one to both, or off. If you're leaving the boat for any length of time, move that round to the off position. The only thing that will be working will be the bilge pumps. And talking about bilge pumps, let's just show you where the through holes are. And they're underneath here. There we are. So you have a collection of well marked through holes, very sensible because everything is in one spot. So if you have a leak, you can immediately pinpoint it and react. This here is your raw water inlet, and every now and again it needs to be taken off and cleaned, and that's for your engine pickup. That picks up, that's the water feed to the engine to keep it cool. This is the raw water feed to the head, so that can work. Galley drain, macerator discharge, and there's your vanity basin drain. So very sensible, everything's right there. There's 3 120 amp hour batteries right there, and there's your tools, your toolkit. This is an important locker underneath here. So that's it. That's where all the power comes from. It sometimes helps to have a look underneath this cover to make sure there's enough water, and if you do have to add water, make sure it's distilled water. Before we leave the dock, it's always good to do your engine checks, and this is what we do. We slide the steps out like that, lift and slide. You can move these back. There we are. Just slide them into there, and you have really good access to what you need to see. Over here on the side is the dipstick for the engine. I'm going to pull that out and show you. So there, it gives you easy access to the dipstick, which is right there. Okay, so that comes out the front. Dip it twice because there was a vacuum in there that gives you a bad reading, so it's always good to dip it twice. And engine oil is filled in there. Never open that up, because at the back here you've got a basket which has got the coolant level in it, and I'll show that to you when we get into the aft cabin. Just check that the V-belt is okay, and that's all you really need to do. Make sure the engine mounts aren't loose or coming loose, and that's where the bottle is, right there for the expansion when we get to the back. Now that expansion tank will gather the water expanding from the engine, and it will transfer itself into that bottle under vacuum. And when the engine cools down, it'll draw the water it's expelled back into the engine. So basically it saves you having to top the engine up all the time. But it is important that it's at least half full. This is your AC panel. Most important switch to switch on is the battery charger switch. Okay, so that will then start putting power back into the battery. It's essential when you're trying to get the fridge to cool down and so on. And even if you want to use the microwave or any of the plug outlets on the boat, this can all be achieved when you're plugged into shore power. Now, if you remember, I said that we were going to disconnect the shore power once we had knocked this all off. So you need to switch everything off here. AC main breaker off, and all the other breakers off. Then you can disconnect that shore power cable by giving it a twist and take it out. Remember to take it with you, because that's your power. Over here is the 12-volt DC panel. Okay, going through it is fairly straightforward. LPG gas, that is essential to switch on the solenoid up in that gas locker that we showed you, which will allow propane to come down to the boat. There is another control panel there, that is your LPG gas control. Now, to get the stove to work, you obviously have got to switch that on. You've got to switch your LPG gas breaker on, and you've got to have it switched on in the locker. So you need to open up the bottle. The refrigerator, that's straightforward 12-volt refrigerator, which needs to be on when you are tied to the dock, because you're not going to be flattening the batteries at all. Water pump, this is your fresh water pump. You can hear it running. It'll run for a few seconds, then cut off as soon as it reaches pressure. I usually don't leave it on. I use it when I need it, and when I'm finished I just click it off. Sump pump is for your shower. In the head Now the head has a little sump box there, and you just switch that on and then operate the switch, which I'll show you where that is. That blower, nice to have when you start up the engine, get all the fumes out of the engine room. Okay, stereo straightforward. Macerator is interesting. You've got 2 macerator bump, and this is to prevent you from actually accidentally bumping it. So you press that on, and then you energize it with that, and you can hear it. And when it makes that high-pitched noise that it's doing right now, your holding tank is empty, and it'll scream up. But I would suggest that you do that once a day. So remember, switch on the top that says macerator, and this is the one that does the damage. That pumps out everything. Bilge pump, that's just to test your bilge pump is working. You can hear it working. Move up here, these are your running lights, steaming lights and so on, which we won't have much use for because you won't be sailing at night. This VHF radio, switch that on to give you power to VHF. And this is the windlass we were talking about. You need to have that on, make sure the breaker underneath the seat is set, and start the engine, run it at 1500 RPM, run it for a good few minutes to get some charge into the batteries, and then you can lift or drop the anchor as you so wish. Okay, autopilot, you need to switch that on, which will give you action on the autopilot and that little screen. So we'll switch that on and just show you that working. And of course there's the radar and heat. Okay, you read the instructions about the heat, it says. Okay, so to switch on, obviously switch it on here that says VHF radio, so that's now on. And then you can press that will give you this. Then you can come back here to the weather. There's a cloud and rain. Press that and hold that down, and it'll go whiskey X-ray, which is your weather channels. And then to get different channels, we scroll up and down.
At 9 a.m.
And you've got 10 working channels there, and it's very straightforward. So before you start showering, switch on the sump pump switch on the panel, and then when you're finished, you just hit this button, which is hidden underneath here, called sump pump, and you can hear it sucking the water out, and it'll be pumped over the side. So there you go, that's quite easy. So the first thing you make sure is in this collection of through-hole fittings, you saw one that said head pickup. That's got to be open so that it can draw the water out of there and into this toilet. Now the toilet has got a rotating switch up here. That is the off position, that's the dry bowl, that's where it should always be left when you're not using it. If you want to pump out, you rotate that around to the flush side, you'll see that's flush, and you pump on this. Now if it gets squeaky like it is at the moment, take a little cap of olive oil and throw it in there, and that noise will disappear. So I'm pulling it up, and I'm going to switch it onto the dry bowl side, which is there, and that's be that for the head. Okay, so you lift this chap like that, and just slip your hands in there and give it a little plug. It's only held there by magnetic strip. So pulling like that seems impossible, but you just slide your hands down there and open it. Right, here's our autopilot. You switch on autopilot switch down on the DC switch panel to start with, and then you engage this clutch. That's freewheel without any auto helm. If you lock that in, that means that when the autopilot engages, the wheel will turn. Now we're on standby mode at the moment. I'm going to click to auto, and you saw it make a little movement there. And here, if you want to do course corrections, you can do -10, like it is, or the other way, 10. And here it comes back again. Now, using auto helm in this part of the world with the numerous logs and debris, it really is frowned upon. So we encourage you to use this just as an emergency, and the insurance company have threatened not to pay out any damage done while under autopilot, which should speak for itself. Now if you suddenly wanted to go straight into standby, you just hit standby, and then you can take over release the clutch, and you can take over driving. And that's all there is to that for your autopilot. And you just scroll until you get chart, like that, and you can hit chart. And you can see the boat will appear. exactly where it should be, and it's a touch screen, so you can play with it by just touching it and opening it, and that's exactly where we are on the marina. So pretty useful, and you can see all the AIS boats. This is the brand new Outboard. It's a 4-stroke Tohatsu. Most importantly, never leave it on its side, because the oil can flood into the upper cylinder and then cause all sorts of havoc. So it's always best to have it in the upright position. If you do, in an emergency, have to lie it down on the gear shift side and just lie it down gently. This here is your tank connection for the external tank, and there, don't forget, is your kill switch. Over here is your start position. There's a little diamond there, you just set that to start, pull a little bit of choke. That there is gears, so you always want to be in neutral, which is there, you can feel it, that's a head, put it back, neutral, and a stern. So there we are. So pretty straightforward.